And welcome back to another tutorial in the Python's Fundamentals series. We're going to keep continuing. So now we're going to talk about tuples. Tuples are similar to lists, and I actually have it written up already in the inside the program before we get started. They're similar to lists, and except that the tuple is what they call um, um, immutable. Immutable, which means that it can't be changed once it's created. So like with the list, we were able to assign objects to the container type, add things to the purse, but there was the ability to like index to a position and change what's in that position, like what's in that actual pocket of the purse. When I use the purse examples, with tuples you can't do that. The only way you can like update a tuple, or I ain't gonna say only, one way of updating tuples are converting them back to lists, make the change, and then converting it back to a tuple. But they're really used when you're going to you want a container of data that you don't want to be able to change the data over time. Like you want the data to stay same, you don't want it to be changed, and you want to make it hard for someone to copy over the actual data points. So that's what the tuple is for. And then lastly, from a machine crunching or speed perspective, iterating through tuples are faster than lists. So if you have a really big data set and you're going to be doing some for loops and stuff like that, you might need to consider converting your list or whatever data container types you have that you're running in that aspect to a tuple if the list is the only other option. Now there are even faster ways, to do things outside of this series, but if you had to choose between the two, choose a tuple to do your iterations if it's a large data set. So I think that's all I need to talk about before we actually start programming. So let's get started. All right, so first I want to talk about creating an empty tuple. Just like anything else, you need to know what an empty looks like, so you can recognize it when you see it in code. That's the reason why I show the empty, because if you're not familiar with what it looks like, you might not know it's a tuple. So if I wanted to create a tuple, all I got to do is type in whatever the variable I want to assign it to, and then I just open up the parentheses. So the parentheses is how you actually create a tuple. So we use square brackets for the list, and now we're using parentheses for the tuple. So when we do shift enter, as you see in the over here, it says that we have a tuple. It has size 0 because we haven't put anything into the tuple, and it just shows parentheses. And you remember, I know I haven't done this in a couple of times, if you don't have the GUI, all you have to do is just type in type and enter. It'll out and tell you that it's a tuple data type down here at the bottom. And if you do the length, it'll tell you how big it is, length data, and that's size 0, and it's the same as this. So anything that you see in the GUI, always remember that anything that's in the GUI you can get from the console as well, if you just know the right commands. So I just want to make sure you're familiar with those. All right, so let's create a couple tuples. I'm gonna stick with the I like how we continually to use like the names data set with the different names and ages and weights. I'm gonna keep that kind of construct together, so you'll have like a very familiar data set to you each time we do these beginner tutorials. So I want to create a names tuple now, and I want to create an age tuple. So names, let's create some names. Oh, I opened up a list. I'm so used to just creating lists first that I have to remind myself to create tuples. So we're gonna go with my name. Let's go with Michael, John. Let's see, Sally. I think that's what it was. And then I had Jacob, Braxton, and Grayson. Okay, shift enter. So now we have a names tuple that has these values in it, these 6 names in it. And so now we're going to create another one called ages, and then we're going to give these people some ages. So 40, 23, 12, 56, 67, and 100. Grayson is 100. All right, so shift Now we got those two tuples. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about is the tuple indexing. Again, it's the same as a list. So tuple indexing, if you want to get to a specific item in your tuple, you just got to know the index position. So for instance, Sally or John is in second position, so his index position would be 2. So 0, 1, his index position would be 1. Remember, it's 0 index, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there are 6 items. So, but his index location is 1 because he's the second item. And you remember in Python, it's 0 index. So if I want to see John only, I can put in names, open brackets, and put in the number of 1, and do shift enter, and you see John back. Now, this is what you can't do with a tuple. So if I want to say names and I want to change the name, so if I put the 1 back and equal to, I want to change it to Sue, shift enter, and you get this error, type error. Tuple object does not support item assignment because it's immutable, which means that you can't change it, which is, like I say, it's the main difference between it and a list. But we'll go through the rest of the things. So again, just like before, if you want like the first 3 ages, you would say ages. Remember, the first index is inclusive. The next one is not. So instead of 0, 1, 2, I need to do 0, 1, 2, 3 to get the first 3. So we'll keep practicing this. So that's how you get the first 3 ages. Same thing with getting the last element is using -1, or again, I showed y'all that you can take the length of it. So the length of ages, which is 6 in this case, -1. So 6 minus 1 will also give you the same thing as these two give. And then we talked about how you can like get either like, so say if I want Sally and everything else, Sally, Jacob, Braxton, Grayson, I can say names, get the index of what Sally is, 0, 1, 2. I put a 2 here and then just put a colon, and it will return Sally, Jacob, Braxton, Grayson. What if I want to go backwards? What if I wanted Grayson and Braxton only? I can do negative numbers. So if I do names, and so I go, instead of -1, which is the last number, I want -2. So if I do -2 colon, that's going to return just Braxton and Grayson because it's going backwards. You go 0, -1 is the last one number. No, it doesn't start. It's not 0 index going backwards. It's -1 index going backwards. So -1 is Grayson, -2 is Braxton, -3 is Jacob, -4 is Sally, and so forth. So, but it's not 0 index. Just always remember that when you're going backwards, it's 1 index. When you're going forward, it's 0 indexed. Okay. Let's see what else you need to know. Same thing about nested tuples. Say if I had for instance, let's do an example. So say if I have nested tuples, because tuples can hold any type of container type. So say if I'm gonna change the data one. So if data is equal to open parentheses ages and name. So what I did, I just passed in the other 2 tuples. If I shift enter, as you see up here with data, I'm gonna open it up because I like how they set it up. It's 2, right? The size of data is 2 because it has 2 tuples. Is in index position 0, you have that ages tuple that we created, and in index position 1, you have the names tuple that we created. So in this case, if I wanted to go get Sally's name, I have to first pick the right index to get to the right list, to the right tuple, which in this case would be 1, and then Sally is still the 3rd item of that tuple. So you know, to get through these, you have to, they're still 0 index, so this would be 0, 1, 2. So to get Sally would be first open brackets 1, and then open another set of brackets and put 2. Let's do that. So data, open bracket 1 to give us the right index, and then open bracket 2 to actually get Sally. So when I do shift enter, Sally first, that's first represents the second list, the second tuple, and then the 2 represents the position in the tuple that you actually would like to return. Let's see. Again, deleting. So say we wanted to delete stored data in memory. You just use the delete command. So as example, I would delete I'm going to delete ages and names. Because we actually have both of them in the data one. So maybe you stored those and then you just wanted to combine them to one and get rid of them. This is a way to free up memory real time when you're working with different objects. I did want to show you the workaround though. Say, remember I told you I'm gonna do the workaround with an easier tuple though. Let's bring data back. Not data. Let's bring we'll just call it A. A is equal to open tuple 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just so you can see a simple example. You remember, you can't just so say if I didn't want 5, I didn't want the number at 5 to be, I needed it to be 6. So it's position 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So I go A to 4, that returns a 5, and you know, we already know I can't do this. I can't say A is equal to 6. That's gonna give me an error. So the workaround is to cast. They don't have casting in Python per se, but this is what you're doing. You're converting a data type to another data type that you can make changes to, aka the list. And then once you make the changes, you can convert it back to the tuple. This is probably the most common way I do it. If I really want to make sure I got a list and I want to make sure it can't be changed, I do that on the fly all the time. So just knowing this little coding trick is important. So I would say A is equal to list. I'll call the list object an A. So what this is going to do, it's going to change. All it's going to do is change this visually. Instead of A being a tuple, A is now going to be a list, and you're going to get square brackets instead of parentheses. So when I shift enter, the brackets changed to square brackets, and then the type changed to list. So now I can go to A in the 4th position is equal to 6. Make that change. Okay, so we just made that change. Right now I'm gonna say A is equal to tuple A. Make that change, turn it back to a tuple, and now A in the 4th position now is 6. So that's the quick workaround of trying to change tuples back to, you know, to other numbers. If you really want to keep a tuple and make an adjustment to it. See, lastly, I want to cover, like I said, I knew this wouldn't be a very long video because tuples and lists are just so similar. There's not a lot of differences between the two outside of speed of processing and the assignment issue. But the last thing I want to make sure you're familiar with is we always do the loopings. So looping tuples, it's the same as looping everything else. We'll go through it quickly. So for val in A, which is a tuple, print A, and you'll get all the elements, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh no, my bad. I make this mistake sometimes. This is just printed back out the tuple. I meant to print val. Okay, then you highlight this all, and then you shift enter. Now, yes. So each loop 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 6. Or again, you can use the enumerate. If you put enumerate here, it'll give you both the value and the index number. Yep. Or, you know, the last way I showed you is if you didn't want it as a tuple, you can use multiple assignment, and then just add an index here and a comma, and then I tend to just put that here just for showing examples. Now the two are separated. They're not tuples, they're just single variables. and they're just so this parentheses is off now, as you notice. So they're just printed out values, and you'll notice over here that says this index and val is 4 and 6. They're always going to be whatever the last thing in the element list is, the last thing that it saw, because technically it creates these variables. When you do this for the value, this is the same as you're just creating val equal to something, except the for loop is the one who dynamically changes what its values are. But so to the computer, this is just a int. This variable just represents an int, or you know, in this example, and it stores it like an int. So it's not a really big issue. Let's see. I think the only other thing that's interesting, tuples, if I'm not mistaken, one more thing is that if you know a value, you can get its index. I don't know if that, I think that's true in both, but like say if I do a dot index and give it a number, say number 3, it returns back its index position, which is 2. So 0, 1, 2. So 3 is in the second index position of this. So maybe there's something you're looking for in a list. You know it exists. You check this membership, and now you want this index. That's very common. So for instance, we didn't do membership checks, but if I said if 3 in A and do shift enter, it's gonna say it's true. All right. So I said, okay, there is a 3 in there. So my next thing might be, what is the index of 3? So you find out the index is 2. So now because you know the index, you could pass that to something, or do something with that information, and create new data or solve a problem that you're trying to solve. So memberships and these index things, they're like helpers for you to give you more, it gives you more information about what's going on in your tuple and stuff. So the more you learn those little helper functions, the functions that kind of make things quick, the better you'll be in creating very good Pythonic code. What I mean is that you could have gotten that by doing a for loop and looking through each value, and then when you find the 3, break out of the loop and then return the 3, which is more like a classical programming problem. But Python, you know, natively does that. So I try to use how Python does things, because in general Python is written to be fast, so it's probably faster than your way of trying to solve that same thing. So the community does a good job of keeping their core language up to speed. I think that's it in regards to tuples. Let's do a recap. So first, we talked about what is the difference between a tuple and a list. Tuple is similar to a list, except that it's immutable, which means it cannot be changed once it's assigned. We talked about that it's the preferred data type when you don't want to change data over time, and iterating through tuples are a lot quicker than iterating through list. I showed how to create an empty tuple. We talked about how to instantiate them. We did a tuple indexing. So these are the ways to index through it, very similar to the list indexing. Nested tuples, so we created multiple tuples, like we created a tuple that had 2 tuples in it. So I wanted to show you how you can get to the tuple that you wanted to get to, and then get to the actual values within a tuple. So that's how you do that. We talked about deleting tuples, and then we also talked about tuple to list conversion. For changing data in a tuple and converting it back. And then lastly, we talked about looping through lists, list membership. This is list membership, and this is not list membership, tuple membership, but all the memberships are the same, by the way. Tuple membership, and then this is index inquiry. That's what I would call it, index inquiry, where you actually sending in a number that's in the data, and you're trying to figure out where that index is for that data point that it found. Again, that covers all of tuples, which is good. And this will be the end of this tutorial about tuples. It's a very small tutorial. Tuples are not very complicated. Again, if you understand lists, you understand tuples, just remember you can't change it once it's done, once it's set up. Again, thank you for watching this tutorial, and I hope you have a great day. Take care.